Well, today we're going to work on a sanding block. Everybody should have a sanding block. It's just I have 2 or 3 different types back at the shop that I use frequently. The nice part about having a sanding block is that you don't have to have a sander that's so powerful and you're on an edge sanding a little piece, but you need it flat. And what happens is you will round the corners with it. Whereas with a sanding block, you're just taking one swipe at a time, and you can watch the material be removed until it's gone, and you get the desired results. So I think everybody should pretty much have a sanding block in their toolbox, and that's what we're going to do. Is I think we're all going to build sanding blocks, and they're fairly inexpensive to build and very basic. So anyway, we're going to get started. This standard sheet of sandpaper. I've designed this little thing to rip it, and it's already made. I use a hacksaw blade just screwed to a piece of plywood. I have it marked with each size that I like to cut. There's for half sheet and different things. So anyway, it just makes it more convenient, and it's very simple to build. And I've been using this one here is probably at least 20 years old. I've built it years and years, maybe 30. So anyway, we're going to divide a 9 by 11 sheet of sandpaper into 3 pieces like this. Okay, so the 11 divided by 3. 11 divided by 3. I'm going to cheat and use a calculator today. I can come up with a pretty close estimate, but it's just a lot quicker and more accurate. We just have to be able to convert from decimal to fractions and vice versa. So 11 divided by 3 is equal to 3.66. So I'll just draw this because this is more of a reference thing. It's not our actual sanding block, and that'll be over here. So that's like, so like a little bit wider maybe. There we go. It's 11 inches by 9 inches. All right. So we're going to divide this by 3, so roughly here and here. And what I say was 3.66. I asked myself a lot of questions. 3.66 inches. All right. And then, let's see, and then we'll have 1, 2, 3. So then we have the 9-inch side. So I'll just rip off a piece of paper so you can have a sample of what that looks like. Can you see this, Don? I'm lining it up on my line. So I'm just going to rip it. And this should be, this is very, very close to 3.66 inches. Just over 3 5/8. It's actually very close to 11/16. So anyway, now we have our piece. So now I can draw a picture of the sanding block. Now that we got a basic dimension to start with. So let's see here. Top view. Let's do the edge view. This is just a sketch as always here, so you just got to kind of remember that. It's going to have 2 pieces. And what we want the sandpaper to do is go in between this right here, and we'll wrap around the edge, come around here, and then go back into this groove right here, and it'll be held by 2 screws. We've got to countersink 2 screws in. Always they'll cause a hot spot in your hand and blister up on you if you do too much sanding with it. So you want these countersunk. We'll probably radius this top edge. So let's see here. We know the depth is going to be 3.66 inches. Oh, there we go. 3.66 inches. All right, this little line, I don't even need to really write that on there. I'd just round that up to 7, but all that does is math. In math, that means you're repeating. I don't know why I'm doing that today, but so we'll just round it 3.67. All right, so now we need about a 1/2 inch of sandpaper here, 1/2 inch, and a 1/2 inch to wrap underneath there. Or, you know, even 3/8 would do the trick. And this is going to be 3/4, give or take. Three-quarters. All right. And then we're gonna, we need to figure out this length right here. Okay, if our length is 9 inches, so we need 2 halves, so a half here and a half on that end, so it's 2 times 1/2, let's see, 2 times 1/2 plus 3/4 on each end, 3/4 on each end, that's times 2. That's 1 inch, and that's 1.5 inches, so we come up with 2.5 inches. Our length is 9. Okay? So 9 minus 2.5 is equal to, what would that be? 7, 6.5, give or take, right? Minus 9 is 7, minus 1/2 is 6.5. That should be right. All right, so this is 6.5 inches right here. Now remember, we have 2 pieces. So this time I'm going to label the top as A, the bottom is B, although they're both exactly the same size. We're just going to label them different because we have to do something different to A than we do have to do on the bottom. So anyway, let's go ahead and make our little label. Quantity, size. And we're just going to make this out of number 2 common. Pine. So it's just a pine board. Essentially, a number 2 common just refers to its quality. So we have A, and B. I made a D. Oh well, I can laugh at myself. There we go. So we're going to have 1 and 1, because we're only going to have 1A and 1B. And then we are going to have it be, you know, for the width is 3.67. Well, that's real close to 3.5, which is a standard 1x4. So we'll just use that. So it'll be a standard 1x4 by 6.5 inches long. That way we can just use lineal footage. That'll save us a ton of time. So that's why we're going to do that. Okay? And then we'll do the same thing on the bottom, so it'll be a 1x4 by 6.5. Okay? Now if we're going to make detail drawings, we would actually label this whole part where it's been routed and how deep the counter sinks are. We can probably just do it like this. I've done this in the past on other projects. I think essentially I did that on the toolbox. So you all should have seen this before. This stands for counter bore. Actually, that's a symbol that stands for counter bore. But we'll just write out C-bore. C-bore. And then it'll be diameter 3/8 by 1/8 deep. All right, and then we'll drill another hole through this top piece that's 3/16. So the through hole that goes down into B is going to be 3/16. So I'll just write diameter 3/16 through. Okay, so that's essentially the sanding block. So let's just go ahead and build it. Sometimes you see things while we're building that will make things much more self-evident. So let's just go ahead and get that built. So we know our length is 6.5. We'll grab a couple pieces of 1x4 and get going on it. So see you in a minute. All right, so what I did is I just chose a drop from a previous job. See, it's even got a notch out of it. I don't even know what that was for actually. But we need to choose a piece that's fairly flat. See, this is decent. By the time you get out here, see it rocks a little bit. That's something we can fix. We're going to fix that rocking when we actually build the sanding block. Whereas you can get some really bad piece of 1x4. Just give me 2 seconds here. I won't be able to find them now. Oh, there they are. Here it is. So this is a 1x4. See how it's got this big arch right here? You probably can't see it. See how it rocks a whole bunch? That one might be able to be used for our letter A, because what you do is have just the points of it holding down the paper. And it's fine because it doesn't rock. It just goes to prove you can use all sorts of different types of stock, even if they're not quite perfect. But you want to keep in mind, well, that's not going to be our best bottom part because we have to sand that flat. So the way I just thought I'd show you that quick before I cut. So we'll actually use this piece for letter A. So, okay, moving on over to the saw.
Go.
Okay, so now we're just going to cut this really rocky piece at 6.5. We're going to label it straight away. So 6.5, let's see, right there, it's pretty close to 6.5. And then we go ahead and cut it. It doesn't like that. What can happen, that was binding, so what happens is there's a lot of internal stress inside that piece of wood. So what it did was it actually grabbed the piece, or the blade, it pinched it, like on the main part of the blade. And when that is happening, you stop the saw, clear the piece just the way I just did, and then it'll be a lot better. It'll cut again. Anyway, you just go back to the line. It's okay to cut it, you just got to clear it. There you go. This will be a drop. Okay, now I'm going to grab another piece here. I'll use this piece as a template. Alright, so now I'm going to cut this top piece. It's easier to line up on the left side for me. I'll do it from the right when I need to, but this time I don't have to. Okay, there's still plenty of stock there to build another one. So I'll write letter A on this one. See, letter A. And this will be my letter B. This is the flatter one of the two. Okay, so letter B. All right. And we'll figure out where our holes are and drill it on the drill press. All right, so this is the top part. That would be letter A. So we're just going to go half of 3 3/4 should be 1 3/4, or half of 3 1/2 is 1 3/4. There, I knew I could say it. So we'll set this over at just a little under 1 3/4 to compensate for lead thickness. And we'll come over each side about, roughly 1 1/4 inches. Let's go 1 1/2 inches just to get away from the edges a little bit. So go 1 1/2 inches on each end. I'll have a drawing for you guys to go off of, or I'll make a drawing better yet. Or if you can make a drawing off of what I'm doing here, that'd be better yet. So right now, remember I said it had a bowl in it? So I don't know if you can see the light in there. So there's a gap between there. I don't know if you can see between the scale and the wood. There's about a 1/16 gap there because this is a bent piece of wood. So we're going to have that down towards the other piece. So what it's going to do is it's going to contact right on the end of the wood, here and here on the bottom piece, and that's going to hold our sandpaper in really good. Whereas if I had it like this, I could screw this down and it'd never hold the sandpaper if I have that upside down the other way. So we got to pay attention to our pieces of wood. So anyway, we're going to go like so. We'll mark it off, our halfway point. Way to check that is just for symmetry. So there's actually 2 lines on there, so if I was doing a bunch of them, I'd mark them. I'd move my scale a little bit, but see there's 2 marks here. There's one on this side and one on this side. There's 2 marks there. So I know I need to cut in between. Okay? So we'll start out with a small bit that I know that will work for the size screw that I'm using. We want to go to the minor diameter of the screw. We're using a number 8, and I'll just grab a screw so you can see it. This is a number 8 screw, 1.25 inches long, so it won't go all the way through. Just got to open this up. These little boxes are hard to get into. They keep customers from tampering with it. It's just the guy that needs to use them. You gotta cut, get them in there so you don't screw up the box. So this is an 1.25 inch screw. Nice thing about an 1.25 inch screw, see, it doesn't go all the way through, but we still have about a 1/2 inch of grab. By the time we countersink it, it's actually going to be only an 1/8 inch from this bottom surface. So that's what we're kind of going for. So we're going to start out from a minor diameter. I'm going to draw a picture right here. So the minor diameter, so say this is your thread. These have like little V grooves in it like this on each side. So the minor diameter, and this is the outside of the screw. So the minor diameter is where it comes right to the center. Okay? That's what you're looking for. And so I'm just going to measure something. I'm going to add just a little bit, get over to the size. So I'm figuring that's going to be about, I'm guessing about 3/32. I think some people would use an 1/8, but then you're just barely grabbing on the outside, and I want to make sure we have plenty of pressure. We are not going to crack the wood with 3/32. So let's grab a 3/32 here. I think this is a 3/32. It's hard to read, and I'll just compare it to the thread. I can clearly see the thread on the outside, so if you compare and you line it up, you can actually see that the drill is just covering that inside thing and leaving most of the thread intact. So we'll turn this back over, and we're just going to line them up one on top of the other as good as we can. If I could clamp them, I would, but I can't. So now I'm going to mount the drill in the drill press and drill these holes 1.25 inches deep. Actually, we got to compensate for that counter bore, so we're only going to we'll go to 1 3/8 deep, which is just about through. So we set our drill press. We'll bring it over here and just touch off. Okay, and then we want to be 1 3/8 above that. Right about there, I'd say. Right here it says it's at 1 inch on the scale, and then I just come up to 1 3/8. It doesn't always line up that pretty, but it did this time. Okay, and we're going to start it up. Drill right between those two little marks. What this is going to do, it's going to line this all up for us. All the way through. And you can pack. Does everybody remember what a peck is? Maybe 6th graders may not know what a peck is, but we want this lined up just nice. I should have my sleeves up, moved up. That wasn't real smart. Just always have your sleeves rolled up. I can hear that the drill bit's going plenty fast, so we'll drill the second hole. I hesitated. What happens. And there we go. That's a peck right there. Alright, so now we got our through hole, and they should all be lined up just nice. We're actually done boring on this one now. And we will go ahead and bore the 3/16 hole then. Let's see, 3/16. So we'll just put this right over here. I'll take this drill out and put it right back in the package. 3/16. So when we're doing this together, everybody will drill theirs. Hopefully, if they're bigger groups, we'll break them up into smaller people amounts so that You can get through the drill press a little quicker that way. And we're only doing this setup once because I'm showing you how to do it. I don't know that everybody, we'll let one person probably set up and then everybody will use the setup to save some time, because setups are typically where you use up most of your time. So this drill bit's got to go all the way through. Quite out the way I want it. I'm just going to loosen this and line it up on that hole that's already there. There. I'm going all the way through. Alright, so then we have letter A. Oh, we're just going to let it center. So it just comes down, you're going to let it center a little bit. You're going to hold it firm enough so it doesn't jump. It'll kind of center up and just drill the hole all the way through. Yeah, you got a hole all the way through. Probably set the depth on this so we don't over drill. There we go. That looks good. And the same thing. Just let it kind of find center. Awesome. You got our through hole. That's excellent. And that should allow the screw to slide in and out easily. See that? That's what we're looking for there. Now we got a counter bore. We'll use a 3/8 diameter bit for that. Let's see here. This scale is really hard to read on this thing. I have a drill backs at home that's a little bit nicer than this one, but let's see, where is it? That's not it. Take more time to find the drill bit than it will take to drill it. Alright, so we'll take this small drill bit out, put it right back in the case. Okay, we're going to open this up. We might have to put the table down a little bit. I don't know if we'll get this. Oh yeah, we'll just barely make it. You don't want to ever chuck on the flutes. Alright, we're going to bring the table down just a skosh. There should be enough room in there now. Alright, always drilling from the same side so that the bottom holes line up good into the letter B. Alright, now we got to set this for depth. Just come down until that rests in that hole. And we want to be just an 1/8 inch deep from the shoulder. I think I have a picture around here somewhere of that, so I'm going to actually just bring this one up to hold it in place. And I'll show you what a counter bore is on a little piece of wood I made last year. So I want to be 3/8 above this, so I'm looking at the scale and I take a reading. And I just come to 3/8 above it, or no, 1/8 above it. I want to be 1/8. 1/8 above. Alright, so we're only going 1/8 deep. It'll keep those hot spots from happening on your hands. Alright, then we let it back up. And I'll show you the drawing what a counter bore is. Found this picture to be quite useful last year. So if you can see the lines here, this is the outside of the drill bit, and this is where the counter bore would actually be. So it comes to this corner here. Okay, so there's always this little angle on the end of the drill bit. It's like 112 degrees included, so this angle here would be about 112. But anyway, then we have, this is our surface right here. So that's from the top of the surface of the board, which would be like right here, down to where this is. It says 1/4 here, but we actually want it to be 1/8 this time. So the distance from the surface to the shoulder is 1/8. You see that? Okay, that's the depth of our counter bore this time. We actually had it written on the board over there, so I'm just going to put this back over here, and we'll go ahead and make our counter bore. It's just a tiny bit fast, maybe for so that's 1/8. I'll show you the results here in just a moment. line center, but I'm holding on to it super, super tight in my hand. Otherwise it'll want to vibrate because it's going so fast. So when we're doing counter bores, we're probably going to have to slow the spindle speed down a little bit. Maybe down to 500 or so, 500 RPMs. So anyway, okay, now we'll go do some routing. Okay, we're over at the router stand right now. It's because our piece is so small, it's much easier to hang on to the piece and move it through the router bit than it is to try to take and have it on the table and make a little fixture for it and then drop the router down around it and go around it with that. So I'm just going to use the router stand for this operation. Again, we'll set it up once and then we won't have to do it again. That way the kids or you guys can do it. So anyway, I'm going to take the router bit that's in there out right now. I just do it from down below. And we'll actually practice this. Everybody in the room will practice doing this eventually. Over the year, we'll be doing a lot of setups here. So most of the machines are fairly quick to do it on. Well, we're going to let this down. All right, so see this aluminum here, you want to have that all the way down so that you can see the whole nut. And then on the spindle, you got to get the wrench on there. Now we're taking the bit out, so we want to be on the opposite side, I believe. No, that's tightening. Let's go on the other side here. Now see how the wrenches are offset. Now I'm going to put them across my hand like that. Now I should be able to just close my hand. Oh, that's tightening. Now I got to do it the other way. I got a nice tight nut. So anyway, see they're offset. Now I'm just going to push it. There. All right. Now use your finger just to loosen the nut, and there's a snap ring. You got to come up against the snap ring, and you got to loosen it one more time. See how I let go there? Now I'll be able to pull the router bit out through the top. Trying not to touch the cutting edges, I just pulled that router bit out, and I've got to change collets. This is a 1/4 inch diameter collet, and this bit has a 1/2 inch, so I got to change out the collet too. So I'll take the collet out. All right. So collets are made for a very specific size. Like this one is made for 1/4 inch. It fits fairly snugly into the collet. And there's a huge difference between a collet and a chuck. So never think a chuck is the same as a collet. So you can explore those differences later. This is a 1/2 inch collet. See how much bigger hole? Okay, and this is where we keep them, right over here. The other thing is router bits should always remain on top of the table in a place that's safe. And the sooner you can get it back into its holder, the better. Now this holder is different than the one I just took out, so I'll have to go over and get that holder to move it back to the cabinet, because we never want to move the bit around the room without having it in its holder. Okay, then I'm going to put this back inside. I have that collet just a little bit looser. There it goes. You want to have, supposedly speaking, you can have only a 1/4 inch of this actually holding. I would never do that. You want to collet on as much of the shank as you can, typically. You want to have it all the way up, but you want to have a good chunk of it in there. So anyway, sometimes you gotta use things to their limit. Now I'm tightening the collet. And when you use things to their limit, there's limits to those limits. And like I say, I just set a 1/4 inch minimum. That's one of those situations where you don't want to do that unless you absolutely have to. And you don't have to. So in other projects we do here, are we going to have to max that out? All right, so then we're going to set the height. I just use the edge of the bit. I bring it up until it just barely touches, and I back it off. So I'm bringing it right over the corner. I bring it back down a little bit. I'll tighten this back up. I don't have my dust collector hooked up yet, but as soon as that's hooked up, be able to do that. So I'm going to go grab the holder for this bit and put this one back in the cabinet. So anyway, you leave this one there, and I'll be right back. Okay, now I'm just going to put that drill or that router bit back in. See, I'm over the top of the table. You put the bit back in the holder, and then it should go right away back into the cabinet. Now this has a bearing on the top. And sometimes it'll just have a pilot, it's called, which is just a piece of steel. But this bearing or a pilot will be made such that it'll come right to the edge of this radius and line up perfectly. And so our job is to get this up and down just enough so that we get the proper radius that we're looking for on it. So, okay, we know that the letter A and our counter bores are up on top, so this is the side we want to route, and we want to do all 4 of these corners. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'll line this bearing up, and then tighten the fence down. Okay, that is tight. It's rolling against the bearing. All right, so we'll do a test cut to see how it looks. I'm just going to plug this in. We're going to make some noise. If you have hearing protection, you want to have hearing protection, and this is very loud. I'll go grab some. Okay, hearing protection in. Okay, the router is shut down now and completely stopped spinning, and now you can hear me. All I did was I put a router on the outside edges. What I'll do is, because these are still sharp corners, I'm actually going to hit that with some sandpaper just by hand and knock these corners down so they're not sharp. You don't want them sharp, not even a little bit, actually. Alright, so you can obviously use a hand screwdriver, and there is nothing wrong with doing that. I typically use a driver because I'm pretty good with it, but you can overdrive the screw and damage the threads in this piece. A couple things to do then. Sometimes you damage them so bad that you got to replace the screw with a larger one. So you just drill out these holes a little bit bigger so that they fit into that bottom hole again, and we'll grab. So instead of a number 8 screw, which we're using right now, we're going to use a number 10. This is also called a pan head with a Phillips driver, and this is a sheet metal screw. Okay. So there's a lot of different types of screws out there. So it's a pan head screw with the Phillips driver and sheet metal screw. Okay, so you just put that in there, and then we're going to go ahead and bring that down until it's snug. Don't have to be super tight. Okay, cool. All right, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to set up a piece of particle board. It's called melamine. I'm going to attach a piece of sandpaper right to it with rubber cement. And what that's going to do is allow me to sand this perfectly flat. That way when I put my sandpaper on here, this surface will be nice and flat, and when I go to sand something, it'll be nice and flat. And that's what we're always shooting for, something flat and perpendicular if you need to. So I'll get that set up and we'll be with you in just a minute. All right. So what I did is I just built this. All it is I used some rubber cement or contact cement to adhere this to the surface of this melamine. This is stuff I use all the time for cabinets at home. It's white on one side. It makes for a nice clean looking interior cabinet. So anyway, when you put the adhesive, this is Spray-On adhesive, so when you put the adhesive on, you want to have something underneath when you're spraying it so that it'll catch the extra stuff. These are going to get thrown away, so I just used our gauges from our benches. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sand this flat now. Use circular motions. What that is going to do, it's going to take off the high spots on our sanding block. So it's nice and flat. It's going to fill up with dust. And, just take it over a garbage can. See, and it's coming. Right now, I can see it's not cleaning up across here. So you can make some little lines like that, and you can see exactly where it is. A little bit more on this edge, I guess. Don't try to force one corner down. Just keep sanding it until it goes away. If you try pushing on one side, then it just rounds the bottom, and that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for flat, not rounded. All right, all the lead marks are gone, and it feels smooth and flat. So I think we're ready to go. All right. Oh, one more thing before we move on to the next operation. So it doesn't rip the sandpaper, we want to radius these corners here a little bit. Okay? The way you do that is you put it flat on this piece here, and you just see how I'm going to raise it up. You should put a nice uniform radius right on there, and that's all you need, about 3 drags. 1, 2, 3. There we go. That looks really good now. These sides are already radiused a little bit, so that won't hurt anything. I think we're set. So let's go ahead and put our sandpaper in, and I think we'll be pretty good, except for just touching these corners with a piece of hand sandpaper. So we'll do that quick, and we'll be set. So to put our sandpaper on, all you do is you loosen these screws, and that'll allow this to come up. This our top piece here, our letter A. Loosen them up enough so that, there we go. You want to have a good gap in there, about 1/16 to 1/8. You put about a 1/2 inch in. If you have to, go ahead and mark it. You know, I'm pretty good with dimensions, so I'm just going to stick it in. And you just push down on the one end, and it's going to be wider than our sanding block, but that's okay. It's just a little bit. So you push down on that end, and then wrap it right around, like I do there. Then we're going to wrap it around this end just the way we did on the other end. So then I'm going to pull it apart. I'm just going to stuff it in there, like so. Pull it tight. Then I'll put the screws back in. All right, there's our sanding block. Now it's fit to sand, all sorts of stuff. Sandpaper won't come loose just haphazardly. We can actually use this for a variety of purposes. We can modify it because it's something we made. If we need to make a new one, we'll just do that. But anyway, pretty cool, I'd say. And like I say, it would be my goal for us all to make one of these to put in our toolboxes for when we leave. So anyway, pretty cool.